Okay, so you've put your 64 bar track, well, you've turned it into an audio file, you've exported it, you've created a card for it in Trello, and the due date has come along. Just whilst I'm here, it might as well be worth just having a look at these are the ones I've got on the go at the moment. So you can see there's a bunch of red ones. These yellow ones are actually technically due today, and then there's a few at the bottom here, which are due tomorrow. So I have a kind of weekly process where every day I will do a writing practice in the morning, at least once a week, but I never really know when that day will actually be. I will do my 8 bar to 64 bar track arrangement, and I will always put those recordings, the little exported files, into Trello, and I'll just put a week deadline on them. But as you can see, sometimes many weeks go by before I actually get around to actually listening back to them critically to see whether or not I want to progress them. But in this instance, let's just say that for this track drop, which I'll just open up, drop D minor 131, what I would do then is I would just check due date, I would click on the file, I'd listen back to it, which I won't do now. I don't know why it does that, but let's just go back to actual size. So here's an idea. I could listen back to that. I won't do it now because it's just going to take a couple of minutes, and I'll do that in a future video. But you listen to it, mark it complete, and then at that point, depending on how you feel about the track, you go to labels. You can either bookmark it, which is the yellow marker, meaning you'll want to come back to it at some point just to listen to it again and maybe turn it into something, but no stress, just up to you whether it's just something that you think is kind of okay, good enough to maybe think back on again another time. But if you don't think it's something that you ever really want to work on, I have a different way of dealing with those ideas than Mike Monday does. I've set up a separate label called non-bookmarked. And what I'll do just to demonstrate what happens here, I've put in one of the little shortcut things in Trello. If I label it non-bookmarked, which now has that black label on it there, and if I close it, it's now no longer at the top of my splurge column. It has now gone over literally onto the blacklist, which is here. Sketchbook non-bookmarked. The trouble is, if you've got all of your ideas in one column that are either bookmarked to go back to another time or not, look how many ideas I've got. I've got loads. It's an overwhelming amount of ideas that I'm coming out with because I'm doing 20 minutes every single day and have done since the beginning of November. So there's a huge amount of stuff that I've got to pull from if I want to. It just makes it even more cluttered if I put the stuff that I know I'm never going to listen back on again in the same column. So I put them over here, and again you can see it's not that many that I think are absolutely awful, but that's because as my practice continues, I'm getting better at coming out with goodish starter ideas. It doesn't mean that everything in Sketchbook is going to become a finished track, because there's about 200 and something in there. I'd love to have time to be able to pull them all into a really, really final arrangement, but it's unlikely that I'll have that time anytime soon. But it does feel good to have a really big collection of nicely organised ideas. And again, with a little bit of, markers, the yellow sketchbook tab, the purple ones, the pink ones, I'll talk about those in a moment. That helps me navigate a huge amount of ideas without even thinking about it, which is absolutely brilliant. But it's fine for me to have the ones I know I'm never going to listen back to again in a separate column. These are usually such random ideas that they're just not really anything. They're just me testing something out. But hey, I still did it. It's still a daily practice. It just means that it didn't in itself go anywhere, but it might have contributed to the sort of wider purpose of my music making. But drop, because we haven't actually listened to drop D minor 131, we don't actually know whether it's bookmarked or, well, whether it's going to be a sketchbook bookmark or not. So let's just change the labels around. Let's take that label off it. And let's drag it back to splurge, because that's where it lives at the moment. And I'll actually take the due date off because we haven't actually listened to it, so we can't check that off yet. So in summary, you listen back to the track that you've put in the Trello card. If you think it's something you might want to work on again, chuck it in Sketchbook, mark it with a yellow marker. If it's not something you want to work back on or listen back to some other time to work on, you just mark it with, in my case, the way I've set this up is you mark it with the little black marker, and that automatically makes it go to the furthest left-hand column, which is the sketchbook non-bookmarked. Never throw anything away, there's no need to. You never know when you might feel like it's worth going back over some of these things, who knows. And again, it's also quite good to see how much you're rejecting, because that means that your quality filter is working well. So that's taking the idea from review into the next stage, which is keeping it in a place where you know you've already done a little bit of triage, a bit of quality control, as to whether or not you want to take that idea further.